A young man simply wishes to spend his time peacefully at school. However, that small wish came to an abrupt end the moment he entered his classroom. Akasaki Haruya lives his school life with one goal in mind, not to stand out. The class representative announces that they need to hand in their assignment notebooks. He passes it forward without a word. A month has passed since he entered high school. His position as a background character is perfectly established as he believes no one is interested in his reputation. And that's because of who else is in his class. The reason he can remain unnoticed is the presence of 3 girls known as the S-Class Beauty Trio. The trio includes Kohinata Rin, the charismatic and cute central figure of the group, and Takamori Yuna, a beautiful girl with long, shiny black hair. The final member is Himekawa Sarah, a girl said to captivate men with her beauty and elegance, considered practically a perfect woman. Haruya is startled when his classmate, Kazumiya Yuki, calls him out. Yuki points out that Haruya has been watching the S-Class beauties for a while now. He eagerly asks if Haruya gets along with any of them. Haruya bluntly states that he's not interested. Yuki finds this amusing and remarks that he now understands why Haruya is always alone in class. Yuki, who seems like a storm, recommends that Haruya take an interest in his classmates. Haruya, however, thinks that as a solitary guy, getting involved with them would only cause problems due to others' jealousy. Since he doesn't plan on changing his ways, he believes they'll never have any contact. Besides, he has his own plans after school and doesn't need friends there. He decides to go straight home. Once home, he carefully changes his appearance, making sure none of his classmates would recognize him. He transforms from his plain, glasses-wearing school persona into a more stylish version of himself. Satisfied with the change, he heads out. His after-school plan is simple: go to the bookstore to buy shoujo manga every day. To him, this is far more important than hanging out with anyone. He recalls the last volume where the protagonist was attacked by a thug. She was saved just in time by the male lead, and he's been waiting eagerly for the continuation. He imagines the protagonist will save her in a very cool way. Suddenly, he's snapped out of his thoughts by a man's loud voice, suggesting a girl should become a model. A girl is politely refusing a man's advances in an alleyway. Haruya thinks it looks less like a model scout and more like the man is hitting on her. He thinks the girl is cute, but her voice sounds strangely familiar. He realizes this situation is strikingly similar to the shoujo manga he was just thinking about. The girl pleads for the man to stop. Haruya is stunned by the coincidence. Haruya debates with himself, not wanting to get involved. His instinct is to leave and do nothing, but he doesn't have the mentality for it. Just then, the man grabs the girl's arm, causing her to cry out. He sighs, thinking that if he were the protagonist of that shoujo manga, he would act. With newfound resolve, he glares at the man. He steps forward and shouts to get his attention. Haruya firmly grabs the man's wrist, telling him that he's hurting her. He positions himself protectively in front of the startled girl. The man angrily confronts Haruya, asking what he wants. The girl looks on, speechless. Having jumped in to save her on impulse, Haruya now finds himself at a loss for what to do next. Though terrified, Haruya manages to tell the man that he's too old to be acting like a child. Mistaking Haruya for her boyfriend, the man curses and leaves in frustration. He asks the girl if they're safe now. He suddenly realizes that he is still holding her hand. Flustered, Haruya quickly lets go and apologizes. The girl thanks him for his help. He awkwardly excuses himself. He tells her to get home safely before making a hasty escape. The girl watches him leave, still processing the encounter. Back home, Haruya thrashes around on his bed, overwhelmed with embarrassment. He can't believe he said such a corny line. He wishes he could disappear. After calming down, he sighs, still thinking about the incident. He thinks about the girl. He finds himself wondering if she managed to get home safely. The following Monday, class proceeds as usual. He overhears his classmates talking about an amazing event. Haruya is startled by a loud exclamation in the classroom. He sees Yuna trying to calm down an excited Rin. Rin excitedly recounts how a guy helped turn down someone who was hitting on Sarah. She asks Yuna if it wasn't cool. Yuna agrees that such things happen, though she admits Rin scared her with her excitement. Haruya realizes they must be talking about Himekawa-san having trouble with someone hitting on her. Sarah confirms that someone helped her with a persistent man. She regrets that she couldn't even thank him properly. Listening in, Haruya thinks that Sarah is noble for wanting to thank her rescuer. Yuna asks Sarah if she got his contact information. Rin jumps in, exclaiming that the whole situation sounds like fate, just like something out of a shoujo manga. Sarah is momentarily stunned by her friend's suggestions. She becomes visibly flustered. Sarah quickly denies that he was that kind of person. She adds that her family has already chosen someone for her. Rin simply comments on how mature Sarah is. Listening to Himekawa-san's conversation, Haruya reflects. He also saved a girl, but he assumes the one she's talking about must have looked cool. The more he listens, the more differences he finds, and it makes him feel bad. He admits the girl he saved was also cute like Himekawa-san. However, he dismisses the idea of them being the same person as an impossible coincidence. At that moment, Haruya was certain that their conversation had nothing to do with him. As he listened carefully, he never imagined what was to come. He never would have thought that he would eventually spend time with them. At that time, such a thing was unimaginable, as the connection between them had only just begun. He ponders the conversation he overheard between the S-class beauties, noting its familiarity but quickly dismissing it as mere imagination. As Haruya walks, his phone buzzes, breaking his train of thought. The message is from his friend, Neu-san, asking if he's read the manga she recommended. He considers her the only friend with whom he can discuss his hobby, so he feels the need to reply carefully. He enters a place called Café. Upon entering, Haruya is greeted by the staff, who offer to show him to a seat. He reflects that since starting high school, visiting this cafe 3 times a week has become his routine. As someone who lives alone, it has become his favorite place. As he waits to be seated, he is suddenly startled. A waitress enthusiastically greets him as Oni-san. Surprised, Haruya recognizes her as Kohinata-san and offers a simple hello in return. Another staff member asks if he'll have his usual, and he agrees. He observes the waitress, Kohinata-san, taking his order. He thinks that her aura is similar to that of an S-class beauty and that she bears a resemblance to his classmate, Kohinata. Kohinata leans in close, whispering that her break is about to start and asks him to wait. Her forwardness flusters him. He thinks that the Kohinata he knows from school would never invade his personal space like this. Shaking off his confusion, he remembers he needs to reply to Neu-san. He looks at his phone and sees impatient messages from Neu, realizing she must be mad. He quickly types an apology, explaining he was lost in thought and tries to change the subject. Just then, Kohinata returns with his meal, apologizing for the wait. He thanks her for the food. Kohinata shyly tells him to enjoy his meal, suddenly switching back to her professional waitress mode. Confused by her behavior, Haruya asks if something is wrong. She quickly dismisses his concern. He decides to focus on his food, saying it looks delicious. After a while, Kohinata sits down opposite him with a cup of coffee. When he asks what she's doing, she cheerfully replies that it's just the usual. Kohinata begins to talk about their relationship, calling him Oni-chan. But Haruya is distracted by another message. It's from Neu-san, who mentions that something curious also happened to her, prompting Haruya to ask what. His preoccupation annoys Kohinata, who asks if he is even listening. In an incredible coincidence, Kohinata exclaims that someone tried to hit on her, just as Haruya reads a message from Neu saying that someone tried to hit on one of her friends. The revelation makes Haruya choke on his food. Kohinata, concerned, asks if he's okay, wondering if the food tastes bad. He coughs and reassures her it's fine, but he is visibly shaken. Feeling dizzy and confused, Haruya connects this to the S-class beauty's conversation and asks if getting hit on is a common occurrence. Seeing his skeptical expression, she assumes he doesn't believe her. Kohinata clarifies that it was her friend, not her, who was approached yesterday. Haruya thinks Kohinata-san, while plain, is still cute enough to be considered a beauty. Then there's Neu-san, his shoujo manga friend, whose face he's never clearly seen due to her sunglasses, but he is sure she fits into the beautiful category. He also remembers that the girl he saved yesterday was pretty, though he doubts he'll see her again. Suddenly, a wild thought strikes him. He gets excited, wondering if a shoujo manga-like world is unfolding around all these beautiful women without his knowledge. Kohinata snaps him out of his daydream, asking if he was listening. She sighs in disappointment, muttering that she wanted to hear about his love life. When he asks what she said, she quickly replies that it was nothing. Later, while walking, Haruya thinks about the conversations with Neu-san and Kohinata-san. Lost in thought, he bumps into someone, apologizing immediately. As the girl stumbles, he shouts for her to watch out. He grabs her to prevent her from falling and asks if she's okay. The girl thanks him. They both look at each other in surprise, realizing who the other is. The girl recognizes him as the one who helped her before, and Haruya wonders if it could really be her. Haruya is stunned by the coincidence. He tries to play it cool and live, remarking that it would be creepy if he kept appearing wherever she went. As he turns to go, she grabs his sleeve, asking him to wait. Flustered, she insists on repaying his kindness. Haruya tries to decline, saying there's no need to thank him. Seeing her crestfallen expression, she asks if her offer is no good. He becomes flustered, thinking she's worried about being indebted to him. Relenting, Haruya agrees, and the girl's face lights up with happiness. She thanks him, grabs his hand, and cheerfully says they should go. She gives him a bright smile. She tells him not to worry about it as they walk away together. At a cafe, Sarah expresses her gratitude to Haruya for his help both recently and on the previous day. Haruya smiles, assuring her it was no problem and mentioning that he also got to enjoy some delicious cake. Suddenly, Sarah's demeanor changes as she passionately declares that the sweets were a definite hit and exceeded her expectations. Haruya is taken aback by her sudden and intense energy. Haruya points out how she suddenly becomes very talkative when discussing her likes and dislikes. Flustered, Sarah apologizes for her outburst. He reassures her there's nothing to be sorry for, adding that he thinks it's important to express opinions clearly. His comment leaves her momentarily speechless. After a moment, Sarah agrees with him. An awkward silence falls, and Haruya worries that he might have stepped on a landmine with his comment. Gathering herself, she thanks him once again, expressing her happiness at being able to properly repay his kindness. As their meeting concludes, Haruya offers to walk her home. The unexpected kindness catches Sarah completely off guard, leaving her blushing and surprised. Sarah politely declines his offer and bids him farewell. Watching her walk away, Haruya misreads her flustered reaction as discomfort, thinking he might have made things awkward. He sighs, resigning himself to the idea that they probably won't meet again. Later, in a classroom, Sarah's friends excitedly chatter about her fateful encounter. In the same room, Haruya, disguised in his plain school attire, overhears the noisy group talking about Himekawa-san and glances their way. One of Sarah's friends teases her for being bold enough to invite him for a meal. Another friend chimes in, saying that the more she hears about this mysterious person, the more she wants to meet him herself. Flustered, Sarah insists she doesn't like him and only wanted to express her gratitude. Her friends continue their playful teasing, commenting on how cute Sarah is when she's flustered. Pouting with embarrassment, Sarah protests that they've got it all wrong. As the girls' teasing escalates, Sarah tells them to stop. The details of their conversation sound increasingly familiar to Haruya. He reasons that he and the person Himekawa-san is describing are worlds apart. Feeling his face grow hot, Haruya realizes he needs to cool down and can't stay in the classroom. He impulsively gets up and heads out, deciding to go to the rooftop. On the rooftop, Haruya takes a moment to admire the beautiful scenery. Since his glasses are just for show and reflect the light, he decides to take them off. As he pushes his hair back, a voice behind him agrees that the view is indeed beautiful. Startled, Haruya recognizes the voice but struggles to believe it. He turns around slowly, his eyes wide with shock. He is stunned to find Himekawa Sarah standing there, looking just as surprised to see him. In his shock, he can only wonder why she is on the school rooftop. Haruya is still processing the situation. Sarah's surprise quickly turns into a bright, happy smile as she joyfully exclaims that this means they go to the same school. An encounter happens far sooner than expected. Sarah expresses her surprise at their unexpected meeting. Haruya is equally shocked, finding it hard to believe they're attending the same school. Sarah's surprise gives way to a bright smile, happy about the coincidence of running into him. A sudden realization dawns on Haruya: the person Himekawa and her friends were talking about was him. In disbelief, Haruya can't believe the situation. He realizes that the things Himekawa and her friends were discussing were true. The details about being saved and invited to a cafe all rang a bell, confirming his fears. The fact that he is the person she was talking about makes no sense to him, as he believes he's not that cool of a guy. He shudders, realizing that because of the S-tier beauty's conversation, his classmates have unintentionally created an idealized, handsome image of him in their minds. Haruya imagines a horrifying scenario where Sarah might confess in front of the entire class. She could announce that her destined partner is a classmate. This would inevitably trigger a school-wide search for him. He resolves that if it comes to that, he must do everything possible to keep them from discovering it was him, Akasaki from the same class. His goal is to lower their ridiculously high evaluation of him. As he strategizes, Sarah breaks the silence, commenting on the beautiful sunset. Haruya points out that the rooftop is supposed to be a restricted area. Sarah nonchalantly replies that the lock was broken, which is how she got in. Sarah counters that just because the lock is broken doesn't mean it's okay to intrude. Haruya reluctantly agrees with her. She then points out that he is also on the rooftop. He's caught off guard by her stare. Sarah's realization leaves her momentarily shocked. Sarah explains that she was feeling unsettled today, so she wandered around the school and ended up there. Haruya listens to her explanation. Seeing an opportunity, Haruya suggests that the broken lock should be reported, which surprises her. Sarah protests, saying she doesn't want to lose this view and asks if they can keep it a secret. Haruya turns to leave, intending to report it to the staff room. She reminds him that he's not supposed to be up there either. She grabs his wrist, desperately telling him to wait. In a moment of desperation, Haruya grabs her hand. Sarah is surprised by his sudden action. He pleads with her to keep quiet about his presence on the rooftop, promising he'll do anything she asks in return. Surprised by his offer of anything, Sarah hesitates for a moment. Haruya waits for her request. Taking the opportunity, she shyly asks if they could exchange contact information. Haruya tells her it's totally fine. Overjoyed, Sarah thanks him. She eagerly presents her phone with her contact information, asking him to add her. He agrees that such a request is no big deal and prepares to scan her code. Suddenly Haruya gasps, telling her to wait a moment. He panics, realizing his real name, Akasaki Haruya, is about to be exposed. To hide his identity, he decides to use the name of his favorite manga protagonist instead. After changing his username, he turns back and apologizes for the wait. Looking at her phone, Sarah confirms his new username, asking if he is USI, and he nervously agrees. She then asks for his class. This puts him in another difficult position, as he realizes she could easily look it up and expose his lie. An idea strikes him. Deciding that saying something random might lower her opinion of him, Haruya confidently states that he's in first year, Class I. Sarah is confused by his mention of Class I. Sarah points out that first-year classes only go up to Class H. She finds his answer unique and tells him he doesn't have to say if it's difficult. Haruya apologizes, citing circumstances, and internally sighs, thinking he's successfully painted himself as a dishonest person. Sarah smiles, asking about his circumstances and telling him not to apologize so much. He formally says it's nice to meet her, calling her Hamkawa-san. She reveals she's also a first year and suggests they drop the formalities, asking him to call her by her first name. She questions him calling her Asai-san. Haruya hesitantly agrees to her request. He calls her by her first name, Sarah, leaving her flustered and overjoyed. She exclaims that she's looking forward to getting to know him better. As Haruya leaves, he hopes that by continuing to act in a way that lowers her favorability, he can avoid becoming a topic of conversation and finally regain his quiet life. Later that night, Sarah lies in her bed, replaying the day's events in her mind. Clutching her phone, Sarah reflects on how bold he was. And yet, she continues to think about him. He called her by her first name and even mentioned a class that doesn't exist, which she finds intriguing. She muses on what a unique person he is. Although she didn't expect to be at the same school, she's happy about it. She feels it's like a scene from a shoujo manga. She sits up in bed, flustered by her own thoughts. Sarah contemplates how to greet him, wanting a message that isn't too formal or too casual. She considers just sending a sticker. She takes a deep breath to calm her nerves. She wonders why she's struggling so much with texting for the first time. She tells herself it's not because she likes him, but simply because she feels she hasn't properly thanked him yet. Taking a deep breath, she resolves to send the message. Sarah reflects that she's been quite bold today. She squeezes her pillow in a mix of excitement and embarrassment. She acknowledges the feelings accumulating inside her, admitting to herself that she wants to get closer to Asai. Haruya reflects on impulsively getting the contact information for Himekawa Sera, one of the school's S-rank beauties. He stares at her username, Himekawa Sera, on his phone screen. His phone suddenly rings, and he's shocked to see the call is from Sera, wondering what it could be about. The message from Sera asks if he would mind going to the rooftop with her during lunch break. Haruya lets out an exasperated sigh while looking at his phone. He slumps in his chair, lamenting how things turned out this way, and wishing he had lowered her impression of him more. Haruya walks toward his classroom, still so bothered by Sera's message that he barely slept. A friend startles him, exclaiming in disbelief that he exchanged contact info with her so quickly. He overhears the S-rank beauties talking nearby, thinking they have no consideration for his feelings. Yuna smiles, suggesting to Sera that their meeting was like fate. Rin excitedly presses Sera for details, demanding to know what happened and how she managed to exchange contact info. Flustered by her friend's questions, Sera blushes and shyly tells them that it's a secret. Her adorable reaction captivates the entire classroom. Rin gushes about how cute Sera is, but questions why she's keeping it a secret. Sera explains that it makes her feel uneasy, and since her friends are so amazing, she doesn't want the news to spread widely. Yuna seems to understand her reasoning. Yuna reassures Sera that she can talk about it whenever she feels ready. She playfully disciplines Rin for being too curious, much to Rin's dismay. Sera smiles, relieved by her friend's support. Watching them, Haruya notes how well they get along before deciding to ask something. Overhearing their conversation, Haruya asks if the name Usai sounds familiar, worried that Sera might be trying to identify him. Yuna recognizes it as the name of a shoujo manga protagonist, adding that someone she knows thought the character was cool. Rin is surprised, commenting that Yuna doesn't seem like the type to read manga, but Yuna clarifies that she just heard about it from her cousin. Rin agrees that Yuna doesn't have a shoujo manga vibe. Sera confirms that it's a manga character's name. Haruya breathes a sigh of relief, glad that he managed to avoid being found out. As Haruya heads to the rooftop, he realizes his attempts to lower Sera's favorability have failed and resolves to succeed during this lunch break. Haruya arrives on the rooftop and greets Sera. She thanks him for coming, addressing him as Asai-san. In an attempt to be off-putting, he deliberately sits far away from her. Sera cheerfully tells him he doesn't need to sit so far away, oblivious to his true intention of annoying her. When she asks if he always buys lunch from the convenience store, they decide to eat. Haruya sees a chance to lower his reputation by claiming cooking is a hassle for him. To his shock, Sera blushes and offers to share her bento with him. She explains that she called him there to properly thank him, leaving Haruya stunned as his plan backfires once again. Sera reminds him of how he saved her from a pickup artist and acted like a gentleman. Feeling trapped, Haruya sees no way to refuse what he considers a form of torture, so he accepts the bento and chopsticks from a happy Sera. Haruya decides to eat the entire bento, hoping his greed will finally lower her favorability. Though he feels guilty, he commits to the act to tarnish his pristine reputation. Sera watches him speechless. After finishing everything, Haruya declares that it was delicious. He glances at her awkwardly. To his dismay, a blushing Sera asks if he'd like to eat lunch with her from now on, promising to wait for him tomorrow. Defeated, Haruya can only agree, wondering why his plan failed so spectacularly. Sera happily thanks him and dashes off, leaving Haruya to wonder if he finally managed to lower her favorability towards him this time. Returning to the classroom, Haruya feels exhausted after his precious lunch break. He then overhears Sera sighing blissfully to her friends about the precious feeling of having someone enjoy the lunch she made. Yuna agrees that having someone enjoy her cooking would make her happy too. Rin excitedly asks if her absence during lunch was for a special reason. Sera gets flustered, denying anything happened but admitting that just imagining it made her feel elated. Haruya is shocked, realizing he likely became a nuisance by eating so much. He overhears the girls concluding that seeing him eat so heartily, especially since Sera wasn't confident in her cooking, was a sign of his true feelings and trust. Sera quietly hopes that Asai-san felt the same way. Her friends cheer her on, hoping she can have him eat her lunch again. Seeing her friends' envious looks, Sera thinks this is the first time she's ever felt so happy. Haruya realizes with dread that this is not how things should be going and that Sera's favorability has likely increased. Everything he's done has had the opposite effect, and the only thing he's protected is his hidden identity. He resolves that he must absolutely protect that secret. He quickly sends a message to Neu-san, asking to meet that night, and she agrees. That night Haruya is approached by Neu, who suddenly asks if they can talk. Haruya is taken aback when she coolly asks if she can refuse. Neu questions if he's simply bragging about receiving high praise from the popular girls in class and wants her to do something about it. Haruya quickly denies that he's bragging. Neu proposes a solution that makes Haruya's heart pound in shock: a date. She explains that if he and Sarah spend time together, they might come to understand each other's true nature. Following Neu's advice, Haruya steels himself during lunch break to ask Sarah out. He feels sick from the nerves, but reminds himself this is all part of his plan to lower his favorability score. He heads towards the rooftop to meet her. He finds Sarah already waiting for him. She's happy to see him and asks if he's there for lunch again. Haruya hesitates, and seeing his reluctance, she asks him what's wrong. Haruya nervously musters the courage to ask Sarah if she would like to go on a date with him this weekend, explaining that he wants to get to know her better. The sudden invitation leaves Sarah completely stunned, trying to process his words. Taking a step closer, a blushing Sarah asks if he's really okay with going out with her. Surprised by her earnest reaction, Haruya confirms, and she happily agrees. On the day of the date, Haruya is in distress. His plan has already gone off track as he finds himself late and involved with the police after helping a lost child. A police officer confirms Haruya Akasaki's identity and asks about the girl with him. Haruya explains that the child is lost and he's been taking care of her. The officer notes that Haruya seems to have somewhere to be and offers to take over. Haruya gratefully accepts, having already informed Hamkawa that he would be late. Though he feels bad for making Hamkawa wait, Haruya texts her that he'll be late. He hurries to their meeting spot, worried he's unintentionally lowered her favorability. He finally arrives and apologizes. Sarah asks if something happened, and he lies that he missed the train. Sarah accepts his excuse and asks about his plan for their date. Haruya confirms he has everything set, and she happily entrusts the day to him. He is determined to take the lead and finally lower her favorability. Their date begins with a meal. Afterward, they head to an entertainment center. He challenges Sarah to various games, including a shooting game. After having lunch and playing a lot, they take a break. He lost every single match against Sarah and feels pathetic, hoping his incompetence has finally lowered her opinion of him, while also noting how athletic she is. Sarah proudly explains her athletic prowess by stating she is the daughter of the prestigious Hamkawa family. Haruya bluntly retorts that her family background is unrelated to her athletic ability. His comment leaves her speechless. She elaborates that her family is conservative and strict, with deep-rooted traditions, so being good at both academics and sports is simply an expectation. Haruya correctly guesses that she's constantly pressured not to disgrace the Hamkawa name. Sarah admits that if she were in her own shoes, she'd probably rebel. He believes that ultimately one has to put in the effort themselves. However, Haruya states that using her family name as an excuse for why he lost doesn't sit right with him. He looks at her and says it's not because she's a Hamkawa, but simply because she, as an individual, is amazing. His sincere compliment leaves Sarah stunned and touched. A blushing Sarah thanks him. Their moment is interrupted when the lost child from earlier appears, joyfully calling out Haruya's name. Both he and Sarah recognize the little girl. As Sarah wonders if Haruya knows them, he tries to play it cool. The child's mother rushes over, scolding her daughter Miyu for running off. Miyu excitedly points Haruya out to her mother. The mother recognizes his name and asks if he was the one who took Miyu to the police. Haruya is horrified when he recognizes the woman as Akasaki-san. Realizing his lie has been exposed, he thinks he's screwed. He panics and tries to end the date immediately. A shocked Sarah stops him, demanding to know what's going on. Haruya panics, thinking Sarah has found him out. However, Sarah simply connects the dots, realizing he was late because he was helping the child, and says he should have just told her the truth. Sarah smiles warmly, reassuring a stunned Haruya that despite the unexpected revelation, she isn't mad that he used a fake name. He explains he doesn't want to stand out or cause trouble at school. She tells him she understands and not to worry. Even though Sarah said that, Haruya can't relax at all. He feels his peaceful school life is on the line as she cheerfully says she'll see him at school. In class, Haruya feels uneasy, worried that his real name was exposed during the date. He happens to overhear a nearby conversation. Sarah's friends ask about her ideal type, and she describes someone who helps people in trouble but doesn't use it as an excuse for being late. One of her friends remarks that Sarah looks like she's having a lot of fun, and she happily agrees. Yuina starts to bring up the shopping mall, but Sarah quickly dismisses it as her imagination. Overhearing them, Haruya is alarmed that she's about to mention their promise not to talk about it. He sighs in relief, but makes a mental note to remind Hamkawa about their promise during lunch. Their conversation is cut short as the teacher arrives. Their teacher, Takarami-sensei, announces she has something to say before homeroom. She reveals they will have an exchange event with other classes for the final period. A student asks for clarification, and the teacher summarizes the main points of the event. The students discuss the event, noting they've never had interactions with other classes before. One boy is confident, saying that from the boy's perspective their class has S-class beauties, so others will want to be grouped with them. Haruya, however, is filled with dread, desperately wishing for lunchtime to come quickly. He calls out to her as a Sai-san. He asks why she doesn't pry into his identity, despite knowing he's using a fake name. Sarah explains it's because he doesn't seem to want her to. She adds with a bright smile that she would be happier learning about him through coincidences rather than by actively looking him up. Her sincere response leaves Haruya completely stunned. Haruya observes that Hamkawa seems full of confidence, which she attributes to him. He notes to himself that even sarcasm doesn't seem to work on her right now. She asks if his class also heard about the exchange event. He confirms, realizing they are in the same class and that he's looking forward to it. Sarah shyly admits she hopes to be matched with Akasaki during the event. Meanwhile, Haruya internally prays that he doesn't get matched with Hamkawa. As they sit down to eat, Haruya continues his silent prayer. Distracted, he accidentally spills food on his tie, and Sarah asks if he's okay. He apologizes for his clumsiness as she hands him a tissue. He feels even more down, thinking about how his name was exposed. The third rotation of the exchange event concludes, with only the final change remaining. Haruya is exhausted, but relieved that he has managed to avoid being paired with Hamkawa so far. He tells himself to just hang on for one last round. However, his luck runs out as Sarah introduces herself as his final partner. For the final rotation, he finds himself sitting across from her and introduces himself as Akazaki from the same class. He internally screams in despair, questioning why this had to happen. Sarah confirms he's Akazaki from her class. In a desperate attempt to maintain his cover, Haruya introduces himself as Akazaki, slightly altering his fake name. He tries to make small talk about her long hair. She confirms she likes it, though it's hard to maintain. He agrees that it must be difficult. Suddenly, Sarah notices the stain on his tie, realizing it's in the exact same spot as Akasaki's. The memory of the incident on the rooftop clicks into place. Haruya freezes in shock as he realizes his cover is completely blown. Sarah stands up abruptly in shock. In disbelief, she asks if he's really in the same class as her. Haruya is speechless, realizing his peaceful school life is now completely over. Haruya weakly tries to claim he's someone else, but Sarah sees right through the flimsy excuse. He can only agree with her. Just then, an announcement declares the end of the exchange event, instructing everyone to return to their classes. As she walks down the hall, Sarah can't believe he was a classmate. She is overwhelmed with embarrassment, realizing that everything she said must have sounded like a confession. Fate, she thinks, is truly terrifying. Her phone buzzes, and she wonders if it's from one of her friends. Instead, it's a message from her father, coldly stating that her arranged marriage partner has been decided. She grips her phone tightly, the weight of her duty as the Hamkawa's daughter crashing down on her. She reminds herself that she's always known she has to be herself. Just then, her friends Rin and Yuina find her. They tell her they were looking for her and ask how her session was. Sarah tries to brush it off, saying it was quite fun. However, her friends notice she seems down and ask if something bad happened at the event. Sarah deflects, insisting it's her own problem to deal with. Trying to lift her spirits, Yuina suggests they go get crepes from a shop they liked. Sarah can only manage a weak, forced laugh in response. Her friends notice her distress. Her friends offer their support, reminding her that they're friends and will help with anything. They tell her she can talk to them when she's ready, and Sarah thanks them for their concern. She says she needs to get some fresh air before class and tells them to go on ahead. Alone again, Sarah wonders what she's doing. She feels she's only caused trouble for her friends and wishes she could experience a normal romance to settle her hazy feelings. She knows that as the Heimkawa's daughter, romance isn't allowed, but resolves that for now there's still time left. Taking a deep breath, Sarah makes a decision. She thinks of Akasaki. She sends a message to the one she cares about, asking him to meet her on the rooftop after school.